such a time as this.
And welcome back to For Such a Time as This, the place where there is no such thing as a silent witness. As always, I'd like to encourage everyone to go to For Such a Time as This today. Excuse me, For Such a Time as This today. It is there, our website that we've launched, so that if Big Brother ever gets upset with us that we are speaking from a biblical point of view, that you could always be in contact with us. We will go there to encourage you to sign up for our email list. So no matter what platform we are forced to go to, you can always find us. And even now, there's some things going on to where people are saying they don't get notifications, they can't find us. Well, if you sign up for the email list, once a week, we will send out an email. Listen, you will never get any advertising from us. We will never share your emails. You will get one email from us per week with the new content. That way you will never miss it. All right, we are going to continue in our series in the book of Revelation. If you want to figure out how to read and understand the book of Revelation, go back to the beginning. This is, I believe, the 11th installment. Don't quote me on that. The 11th installment in our series in the book of Revelation, and it's a long one here. But if you're starting on this installment, you may not understand it. So go back to the beginning. We will explain how to read and understand the book of Revelation, and then you will understand this better. So let's get started. What we do at the beginning of each installment is we explain the loops. There are loops within the book of Revelation, and here's where this loop begins. It begins Revelation 15:1. Then I saw another sign in heaven, great and amazing, 7 angels and 7 plagues, which are the last. For with them the wrath of God is finished. And then you go down to 19:21. And the rest were slain by the sword that came from the mouth of him who was sitting on the horse. And all the birds were gorged with their flesh. That's the loops. This is the perspective more from heaven. And so that loop starts in 15:1, ends at the end of 19. And so here's how we will highlight, as usual. We will highlight the highlights within this loop. So here we go. Let us begin. Revelation 16:1 says this. Then I heard a loud voice from the temple telling the 7 angels, go pour out on the earth the 7 bowls of the wrath of God. Very important. Revelation 16 is very, very, very important. It is pivotal. So what do you have at the beginning of Revelation 16? Go and pour out on the earth the 7 bowls of the wrath of God. Bowls of the wrath of God. God's wrath is now going to be poured on earth. Very important. Please don't forget this. God is going to pour out his wrath on the earth. Verse 2, so the first angel went and poured out his bowl on the earth, and harmful and painful sores came upon the people who bore the mark of the beast and worshiped his image. Who bore. What does it say? Who bore the mark of the beast and worshiped his image. Again, if you've seen the other ones before, we take here at For Such a Time as This the stance that there is no second and third coming of Christ. There is no pre-tribulation rapture. We believe the rapture is the same thing as the second coming of Christ, right? There's no third coming. The rapture and the second coming after the tribulation is the same event. And so here's chapter 16, again, in-house debate, have people at my church believe in a pre-tribulation rapture, love them. I lovingly tell them they are wrong. And so you look at 16. So what happens? God is pouring out his wrath, but it only affects, or it only touches and hurts those to whom are not his. So the first angel went out, poured out his bowl on the earth, and harmful and painful sores came upon the people who bore the mark. Who bore the mark? Right? And we're told not to take the mark. God is able to protect his people while punishing the earth at the same time. We see this. We see this in Egypt. When he pours out judgment, he is able to protect and to distinguish between those who are his people and those who are not. So the argument that the church will be saved from the wrath of God, I agree with that. That does not necessarily mean the church is not on earth. You just saw it. He pulls out the first bowl of wrath, and the people who are affected are only those who have the mark of the beast. Right after that says this: the third angel poured out his bowl into the rivers and the springs of water, and they became blood. And I heard the angel in charge of the water say, just as typo there, just are you, O Holy One, who is and who was, for you brought these judgments. For they have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and you have given them blood to drink. It is what they deserve. Let's see. River turning to blood. What does that remind me of? Egypt, 10 plagues. And in Egypt, he was able to separate judgment between his people and not his people. And so here you have, again, in Revelation 14, God is turning water into blood. It's because of what they deserve. His judgments are righteous. They are holy. It continues in 16. Now watch 16. This is very, 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 very important. I'll read what's there. For they are demonic spirits. He's talking about the bowls that are being poured out. For they are demonic spirits performing signs, who go abroad to the kings of the whole earth to assemble them for battle on the great day of our God, the Almighty. Look at verse 15. Behold, this is Jesus talking, people. Behold, I am coming like a thief. Blessed is the one who stays awake, keeping his garments on, that he may not go about naked and be seen exposed. And they assembled them at the place that in Hebrew is called Armageddon. Did you get it? Did you get it? Bowls of wrath are being poured out on the earth. Jesus says, behold, I am coming like a thief. Whoa, 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 whoa. I thought the thief was supposed to come at the beginning of the 7-year tribulation, before God poured out wrath on the earth. And my brothers and sisters whom I love, who believe in a pre-rapture event, that God is going to come and take his church before wrath comes on the earth, using the thief language, please explain to me. Read Revelation 16. This is like the 7th bowl. What is it? The 5th bowl? I forget. But I think it's the 6th bowl. He is clearly, it's between the 6th and the 7th. He is clearly pouring out bowls of wrath of God. And here you have Jesus in Revelation 16:15. Let me show you again. Behold, I am coming like a thief. Which means what? He hasn't come as a thief yet. Right? Only makes sense to me. And so you do have in Revelation 16, God pouring out wrath, making distinction between his people and those who are not his people, not pouring out the wrath, touching his people. First bowl, you saw that. And then in 15, Revelation 16, chapter 16, 15, he's using the thief language, which means he still hasn't come yet after the bowls of wrath have come on. Okay, then you get to 17. And 17 talks about the whore of Babylon in relation to the beast. Here we go, 17:12. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour, together with the beast. These are of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the beast. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those with him are called and chosen and faithful. This is language talking about the governments of men, in relation to what Jesus is going to do to them in the last days. Look at it. The 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings. They're rulers. But at one point, these rulers are going to give their power to the beast, right? Together with the beast, who is going to be the Antichrist. And if you look, remember, you cannot understand Revelation unless you first read and understand the book of Daniel. Beasts are governments. Do you remember that? The horns are kings. They're rulers. And the beast is going to put together the one world government. It goes down. You get to Revelation 19. Again, I am moving fast. I'm just giving highlights of the loop. Here we have Revelation 19. This is important, and I want us to really look at this, because this may change some things as we've understood them traditionally. I'm going to simply read what's there, okay? Revelation 19:9. Here we go. And the angel said to me, the angel said to me, write this, blessed are those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. The marriage supper of the Lamb. I'm going to say it again, Revelation 19:9. Who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. And he said to me, these are the true words of God. Then I fell at his feet to worship him, but he said to me, you must not do that. I am a fellow servant with you and your brothers who hold to the testimony of Jesus. Worship God, for the testimony of Jesus, is the spirit of prophecy. Again, what does it say? In 19, blessed are those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. Revelation 19:9. Then he goes on to 19. Watch this. Then I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse. The one sitting on it is called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judges and makes war. That's clearly Jesus, right? His eyes are like flame of fire. We see that earlier in Revelation 1. And on his head are many diadems, and he has a name written that no one knows but himself. He is clothed in a robe dipped in blood. Again, typo. I don't know where it was coming from. But he is clothed in a robe dipped in blood, and the name by which he is called is the Word of God. That is Jesus. Verse 14, and the armies of heaven, arrayed in fine linen, white and pure, were following him on white horses. From his mouth comes a sharp sword, with which to strike down the nations, and he will rule. Goodness, typo. He will rule with them. This is the program I'm using. It randomly adds characters. I don't know why. And he will rule them with a rod of iron. He will tread the wine presses of the fury of the wrath of God the Almighty. On his robe and on his thigh, he has a name written, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Now again, let's be very clear on what happened. 19:9 says what? Blessed are those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. And then in 19:11 through 16, it's describing Jesus getting ready for war, right? On his white horse, followed by his believers. You get it? I think Jesus is the seventh plague. He is the wrath of God. He is the fury of God. He is the wrath of God. And I believe Jesus is the seventh trumpet, the seventh seal, the seventh bowl. And Armageddon is the last fury. But watch this. Watch this. Armageddon is the last bowl. Watch this. Watch this. We just read 19:11 through 16. Now watch 17. Then I saw an angel standing in the sun, and with a loud voice he called to all the birds that fly directly overhead. Watch this. Come gather for the great supper of God. Whoa, wait a minute. come gather for the great supper of God, to eat the flesh of kings, the flesh of captains, the flesh of mighty men, the flesh of horses and their riders, and the flesh of all men, both free and slave, both small and great. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth with their armies gathered to make war against him who was sitting on the horse and against his army. Did you get it? That's Armageddon. They are getting ready for Armageddon. But again, let me be clear. Let me show you. Write this: blessed are those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. Blessed are those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. Just a few verses later, then I saw an angel standing in the sun, and with a loud voice he called out to all the birds that flew directly overhead, come gather for the great supper of God. Come gather for the great supper of God. I think the great supper of God is the same thing as the marriage supper of the Lamb. I think most people understand that as being the consummation of his church going into eternity. I don't think that's what Revelation is saying. I think the consummation of Jesus ruling mankind forever and ever, his church taking its rightful place as his bride, does not happen as we go into eternity. I think it happens right before the millennial kingdom. I think it's called Armageddon. I think the marriage supper of the Lamb is the same thing as the great supper of God, which is Armageddon, in which Jesus is consummated as King of Kings and Lord of Lords to forever rule mankind, never again letting men be ruled by the prince of darkness of this world. Now, could I be wrong? Absolutely. And anyone who tells you they know exactly what Revelation, Daniel, and all prophecy means, I would challenge you they do not. What I just did was simply read Revelation 19:9 through Revelation, 19:17. He says, marriage, blessed is he who is invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. They then describe Armageddon, Jesus getting ready, the fury of God, and then the angel says, come gather for the great supper of God. Seems like the marriage supper of the Lamb, the marriage supper, the great supper of God, is in fact Armageddon, by which Jesus is consummated as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. That was a mouthful. Any question, comments, let me know. Again, I'm open to correction, but that's my understanding at this point. God bless and Maranatha.
For such a time as this,